Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tara.
And today we are talking about Book 2 in Crescent City by Sarah J Maas, House of Sky and Breath. Woohoo! And today we're specifically covering chapters 1 through 38. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't tuned into last week's episode, we covered part 2, the second half of House of Earth and Blood. And then next week we'll cover the second half. So we are getting close to the finish line. How are we feeling, Tara?
I'm enjoying the hell out of these books. I'm really liking this. And I'm really excited for the third one to come out. It throws me off every time you say part 2 or whatever, because Sarah J Maas makes parts out of these books. And so my little OCD brain, every time I'm like, why did we not do 3 parts since it's already divided into 3 parts?
Wasn't the first book divided into 4 or 5 parts or something
I don't
that
know.
too?
There
were several parts. And did you catch on that each part is a different level of hell?
Oh, no. No, I did not.
Yeah. So I forget what the part titles were in the first book, but part 1 of this book is The Chasm. And then the second part, and the second part is The Abyss.
Well, we did meet two princes of hell so far, right? We met one in the first book, and spoiler alert, we meet a second one in this book.
And I think we might have met the first prince in Silver Flames. Well, not formally met, but I think that they were an entity. Do you remember the talk about the bottom of the library in A Court of Silver Flames, and how I think it was Gwyn, or maybe it was Nesta. I think it might have been Gwyn, but they talked about a cat presence that they were sensing.
And there was a really weird, not the creature, because the creature obviously we knew, but remember that scene in that where they sensed a person or something scurrying around, hiding or something down there? Yeah.
In the shadows, and even in Frost and Starlight, that shadow that was watching more. I have so many questions. Yes, and I need this resolved now.
Yes,
but yes,
that's the hard part about being caught up with books, is you then have to freaking wait. And I'm not patient. I'm not a patient person. I want to know now. I even spoil books and spoil movies for myself, because I go and look up the ending.
No.
Because I can't wait. But I have not done that with this. I have not done that with this. I'm just saying, in general, I am not a very patient person. I need to know, and then I'll backtrack and do all the research of how we got to that ending, but I need to know the ending. I need to know who murdered the person, and then we'll figure out, how.
At least we're 2 weeks away, or by the time this episode comes out, 1 week away or something like that from House of Flame and Shadow coming out. Because if you were just tuning in to our podcast, Tara and I started buddy reading the Throne of Glass series last year. So I think it was actually 2022, right? So we did that entire series. And then the beginning of 2023, we started reading all of ACOTAR. And then now we're finishing up Crescent City already before the next book comes out. So,
and we're not quite caught up yet. So
No.
I am still good, but I just envision come January, or February 1st, that first week of February, I'm going to be so mad because I'm going to be caught up and having to wait.
Cue crying, waiting a year, 2 years. Yeah, it's going to be terrible. But you want to talk about how this book starts? Because it starts a little bit differently from Earth and Blood. We have a prologue, and it's kind of a very displacing kind of
sad
prologue.
So we are brought into Pangera, and we meet 2 new characters. Well, 3 really. We meet an Agent Silverbow, a Sofie Renast, or however you say her name, and an Emile Renast. And so obviously by their last names, Sofie and Emile are brother and sister. And Sofie is a part of the rebellion, and she is a part of the rebellion for one thing and one thing only: to find her brother, who was separated from her when her parents were executed, because they are a little special. They are what is known as Thunderbirds. and they can basically like trap power and use it for their own, like, whatever they want. It's really cool when you see that happening during that prologue for both Emile and Sofie. But so Sofie is working on freeing Emile, and she has figured out something very, very important, but she has told nobody. Except for that, like, she has told them that she's found it out. She has told them nothing about what it is. And so she goes in, and I believe it's the Hind is the one like searching for her and finds her. And when the prologue ends, she is presumed dead. And Emile is in the hands of Agent Silverbow, who has promised Sofie that he will take care of him. Because as I told Sandra, I'm pretty sure this Agent Silver, as he's known as Silver, is in love with Sofie.
This was such a sad prologue because, like you, even the second time I read this, I put it down after reading it because it's such a heavy, heavy prologue. Because Sofie has just spent 2 weeks in the Kavalla death camp. She has been starved, tortured. Her fingernails have been pulled out, like from after interrogation, and she has not opened her mouth about anything. It's still unclear whether this information that she knows, like that she's bluffing about it, or whether it's something that she legitimately knows. But apparently it is about the Asteri, right? It's something that could take down this whole structure that they have put into place in the world of Midgard. And you feel bad because she seems to come across as being like a very post-college age girl. Like her history is in like acting or something like that, right? And so that's kind of helped her play this part and been able to maneuver these different people. But even finding her little brother and saving all of these kids, it's so sad because at the end, when she's drowning underwater and the Hind is just looking at her sink below the surface, and it talks about the place that they dropped off her body to, because they've chained her down. They've put lead blocks to her feet. And right before they pushed her under the surface, they threw like a white stone into the water. Do you remember when the Hind dropped a little white stone in the water? Do you have any thoughts on what that might be?
Well, see, we've seen a white stone before, right? The joy stone that Hunt like had.
That's what I had thought too.
I don't know, because why would the Hind do that?
Yeah, everything that you hear about the Hind too is like she is the spy breaker. She is the one that is sent in to do the worst of the worst to people to get things out of them. And even Sofie didn't crack. But weirdly enough, like the Hind didn't go like move forward with torturing Sofie. Like that was the strange thing, right?
Yeah, I had to put it down after they talked about like her fingers. Like, I'm a true crime fan. Like, I can usually stand like some gory like stuff, but like that got me because I just like that would hurt so bad. And then to like withstand that because you want to free your brother and then not even get to spend any time with him, really.
I know.
Like, a few hours in the escape where like it's not really time spent with him. It's like, everybody be quiet, like we're escaping. That hit me because like that's just so sad.
And she hasn't seen him in like 2 or 3 years or something. And he's such a resilient enough kid that he's lasted in a death camp that long. It's just, it's so sad. But even at the end of that prologue, you still don't get the sense that he's in safe hands because this commander of the rebellion, this group that they're in, Pippa Stetsos, they don't seem like that stand-up of a person either. They're very extremist as well. Kind of like a Philip Briggs, right? They will do anything and everything it takes to win their cause.
And you see that from some characters throughout this book, where Emile and Sofie are concerned. Like, everybody wants them, but nobody seems like they want them for like good reasons. Like, ever. I mean, Bryce, she does. But everybody else, even the characters that like I kind of liked, like Tharion, like he's searching for him, and I have a feeling he's gonna, do the right thing. But right now, he's not searching for them for the right reasons.
Yes, Tharion has a very different catalyst behind his search for it, because whatever is going on between him and the River Queen and her daughter who he took her V card, it is not
Like, that is, like, the quintessential, like, you thought with your dick and now you're figuring out the, like, the problems with that.
Consequences.
Like, good Lord.
Oh, our poor Mare. Poor Mare. Yeah. So after the heavy prologue, we do get like a funny scene because we're taken to the first chapter, which is a ballet, right? They're a little group getting together. Hunt is meeting up with Bryce and her parents to see Juniper perform. Ember was just being kind of the overbearing mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Randall is just trying to be like, okay, do we have to talk about this now? Like,
stop questioning her. Stop, like, third degreeing her, because she has all these inappropriate questions about, like, so what's up with you and Hunt? Like, what's up with your job? Like, why are you working for the Fae, like, archives now? Like, why couldn't you do something different? It's like a quintessential mom. Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, Mom, shut up.
I think we can all relate to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Bryce is just like, okay. But there's some other weird stuff that happens in this chapter too, because they're kind of walking around this really nice, wherever this performance center is for this ballet. And there's like old art and statues and stuff around. And it's a few times in this book they bring up this Thur, Thurr, very much like, Thor, and how similar it looks to Hunt. And even Randall, her stepfather, is like, this reminds me of Hunt. The abs, just broad-shouldered, powerful.
Well, he is also a god of old, like human time. And we do know at the end of the last book, there was a mention in the epilogue between Jessica and the Prince of the Chasm as the little cat. Like, I really like him. I don't know why. He's probably
She's gonna call him
like,
Kitty Cat.
destroy me. But mentioned something about Hunt's father and the fact that Jessica knew him better than the Prince of the Chasm, and like asked what like he thought his dad would think or whatever.
There was something about that exchange. It was very weird. Like,
like his dad is somebody.
Is somebody or something. I'm not convinced that Hunt has a father in the traditional sense, right? I don't know. We could theorize about that.
Like, there's something going on with his lineage. There's something going on. But anyway, yeah, I like Bryce's like very quippy like text message exchanges with him, because it's always like, oh, look at this dude's abs, look at his ass, or like just very like hilarious. Inappropriately hilarious.
No, the fact that she updated her contact name in his phone to Bryce sucks my dick like a champ, and his boss Isaiah sees it over his shoulder at Celestina's thing, is just like, oh my god.
And his only response is like, I'm happy for you. Well, actually, I think he's like, you didn't put that in there, did you? And he's like, no, it's like an inside joke or whatever. And he's like, oh,
okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy for you. Like, did not believe that this is an inside joke, like at all. Yeah, no.
I love Bryce. Bryce is just such a fun
Bryce and
character. Hunt. He needed some Bryce in his life, because I think it's like a couple months after the events of the first book. It's kind of late August. It's sweltering out there. They talk about Bryce's outfits, like she'll wear a pink skirt and just like her little, workout outfits and stuff. Like,
and the fact that so after what happened in the spring happened, Bryce and Hunt, at Bryce's like starting it, made a pact to not sleep together until the summer solstice. So not only is Bryce wearing these skimpy outfits and he's living in her house with her, and she is like going around and like just teasing the crap out of him, he also knows he has to wait for like 4 more months. And so, yeah, there's some like building of tension going on, like severely.
Which they're waiting until winter solstice, right? That was the date that Bryce picked. So yeah, now it's like August and all this stuff is happening. So like the first book is like a murder investigation thing, and then this book becomes a game of like what happened to Sofie Renast and where is her little brother Emile type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is looking for her. But there have been a few political changes as well. So the Asteri have appointed a new governor of the city, and she seems to be the polar opposite of Micah. Like everybody is shocked by
Mm-hmm.
the appointment because she is like this very feminine, soft, beautiful, seemingly very kind angel, like archangel, named Celestina. And I can't remember what the circumstances were of her having to marry the other one, Ephraim.
So they were friends. So basically, what happens is when Celestina comes to Lunathian, he goes to her old territory, I think. And so
It
now
was a
he's
small
in
one, yeah.
charge of her territory. And they split up the triary of Sandriel. So the Hind and the Harpy are with Ephraim, and the Hellhound and the
And the hammer.
Hammer. There's too many H's in these names. Are with
There are.
Celestina. So Hunt, another H, is now having to deal with the Hammer, who is Pollux, like so savage, and the Hellhound, who is now letting it be known that he did not agree with what was going on in Sandriel's like court, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And so he is basically, or at least seemingly at this point, on Hunt's side when Hunt takes a brawl with the Pollux the first day that he shows up. And it's hilarious because Bryce gets a call when that happens and goes over, and Celestina has called her to like come get her man, basically.
Yeah.
He's acting a fool. And she's like, what the hell are you doing? And then Pollux makes some comments like misogynistic and like just dumb. And she goes over to him and she just like doesn't back down at all. And he like goes to like grab her by the neck as he's in this prison cell. And she just like lets her like and makes like further like demeaning comments to him, which is so hilarious.
I love Bryce in this book. Like she has really stepped into her own. Nothing has really changed with how society perceives her. Like they still look at her as this stupid half-blood. Now she's just a fucking princess type of thing, you know, and she doesn't deserve to have that kind of status. But she's like able to stand up for herself better, and she has that support system with her.
I think the Fae do that, and Sabine for sure within the Wolves do, but I think the everyday person in the world like looks to her as a hero because she gets a lot of stares and like a lot of like people are bowing kind of to her and like treating her with like reverie kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think there is a faction that still treat her like a half-blood whore is what they call her. But then there are those others that are happy with her sacrifices that she has made for the good of the city and things like that. But we do meet another person who at first you're just like, oh my fucking God, go away. Prince Cormac, who is the crown prince of the Avalon Fae. And this is the guy who Ruhn hates with a fiery passion because he is the one that took part in Ruhn's ordeal, right? So he is the one that chased him down. And we find out a little bit more about this ordeal in that Cormac's dad, after some jabs from Declan, who I'm sorry, I love Declan. He's hilarious, but like, dude, like read the room here, okay? Like, so he made some jabs about how they're better than like the Avalon Fae and blah blah blah, and Ruhn's like so much better than Cormac and blah blah blah. And so Cormac's dad's like, okay, if you're so much better, then why don't you try and get the Starborn's sword? And he sends Cormac and his cousins, the twins, in to stop them and to kill them. And Ruhn still gets the sword, but they are faced with some heavy experiences in there, and Cormac stabs Flynn, I think.
I can't remember which one, but it felt very Illyrian blood, right? Didn't it feel that way to you? Like they were in the catacombs under a mountain, like just life or death using, claws and teeth to get to the Star Sword first.
It also felt like the right in Akatar.
Yeah. I could see that. A lot of similarities
And that's the Illyrian. I'm dumb. I was thinking like
in Silver
fourth.
Flames. Yeah. But even like Cormac's arrival, because of course, Ruhn throws a little after party after Juniper's ballet where she does so good, and Fury is the cutest supporting her girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And, Bryce has a little taboo mishap with her star, just her light. It's like having the brightest flashlight or phone and just like everyone getting pissed off and annoyed at you and telling you to like put off the light. And she can't help it, her bosom's on display, just for a beacon in the theater. It was like very Pretty Woman, but like everyone's sneering at her and veneer.
What do you think about that? Because it seems like it goes off at certain times sometimes. Like when Cormac is around, she is like lighting up, for lack of a better word. And she hates him. And then the same with like Hunt. Sometimes you see it like glow around Hunt. And at first I was like, crap, are they mates? Like, is she supposed to be with Cormac and like Hunt is like a stand-in? Like, are we gonna go down that way? Which we kind of do, because Cormac is there as her betrothed. Like, her daddy and his daddy have now decided that the perfect matchup is these two being together. And she's like, over my dead body. Like, I'm not doing that. And so she's fighting this a little bit. And she doesn't want to go to the Autumn King because she's like, I don't really give a shit what he says. Like, he's not the controller of me. Like, oh well.
But also, whether she wants to play this political game or not, she is involved. And like, there are very precarious, political systems in place. So now she has to carry on with this front of like, well, I'm just going to pretend to, be entertaining the idea of Cormac, even though she's still with Hunt. And now she has to be secretive about her relationship with Hunt. So she's trying to dance this fine line. And then meanwhile, it's like Ruhn is just always been shit on by his father for not being good enough and not being a pure starborn, not powerful enough. And so now it's like I understand why Ruhn acts the way he does, like why he decides to just party and like let his mind wander and just try and be as free as possible. So we see like the after party of the show, how he is.
You also see some other things, like Ruhn shares with another character that we meet called Daybright, that his dad was abusive, at least at the like best. He was severely abusive to him because he didn't have the power that his dad wanted. And so he would like put fires out on him and stuff.
Yeah.
And so Ruhn has been dealing with that. And I think that also goes back to Ruhn has always wanted to protect Bryce at all costs. And if the way he protects her is to like be mean to her to get her to stay away, then that's the way he's going to protect her. And so I think this whole time, Ruhn has been using like Bryce's hatred of him as a way of protecting her. And that just makes it so sad because you can, in the moments where you're just seeing his POV, you see how much he loves her. And when you're just seeing her POV, you see how much she loves him and would do anything for each other. But they're doing it in the best ways that they know how. And that doesn't always come across to each other.
And Ruhn isn't the only one that exhibits this very similar behavior with Bryce. Like, we learn a lot more context about Ithan and his complicated relationship with Bryce because someone puts on blast that Ithan, it's the Hind, puts on blast that Ithan is in love with Bryce and has been in love with her since the day that he met her.
Day one.
So we meet that story. And I feel like all of the hatred that we felt from Ithan in the first book when he was basically calling Bryce a whore for sleeping with that guy in the bathroom after agreeing to consider dating Connor, it was almost like Ithan was projecting himself for how he felt about Bryce in light of Connor's death. So it's like, my brother just died and my brain is going to like Bryce, one less major obstacle. Available. Yeah. And he felt really guilty and ashamed of thinking that way. And then he was projecting that same kind of hatred on Bryce.
And we figure out that the reason that Connor finally made his move is basically like Ithan gave him an ultimatum, like you either shit or get off the pot. Like, because if you're not willing to make a stand for her, then like somebody else will be. And in his mind, he's like, it's me, like I will be. But that's the reason Connor finally made the go at her, where Bryce thought it was because Danica finally gave him the permission to.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't. It was Connor was keeping himself back for whatever reason. And we see the scene where Ithan met Bryce and he was coming over to meet like this wonderful hallmate of Connor's. Um, and he met her in the hall and he didn't know that she was the one that Connor was talking about. And Connor had mentioned that like he thought that they were mates. And Ithan sitting here as he's meeting her, like thinking about how he thinks that they're mates and like marriage and like he's gonna marry this woman someday. And then Connor comes in, he's like, "Oh, you've met Bryce." And Ethan's like, "What?"
Dies a little. Yeah. It's weird how Ithan talks about his meeting with Bryce because he talks about feeling a tug toward her and he was just
Mm-hmm.
immediately enchanted by her, which is so strange because Bryce and Hunt have a very specific conversation about different kinds of mates and bonds,
Uh-huh.
and they pretty much decide that they're going to be mates to each other, which was very strange. What do you think about this whole mate conversation with them?
But they also feel the tug towards each other, which is something strange with me because Connor felt the tug with her, Ithan felt the tug with her, Hunt feels the kind of tug with her, and then I think Tharion did too. Like there's all of these men that have this instant connection with her, and they're all a little bit different in their power. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if there's even more. Like I know we know that there's something special about her lineage, like being Thea's descendant, and we find out more about that from little Catman, because he basically says like Thea had two daughters. One was
Helena.
like basically raped and like forced to marry Peleus and produce offspring. And the other one got away after her mother was murdered by Peleus. That is who Bryce's line is from, as well as Helena and Peleus's side. So Bryce has it from both, whereas Ruhn has it just from the one side.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, like there was a hint at that. Like that is why her powers are different than his. Is he's the offspring of Peleus, the rapist, basically.
It's also Greek mythology.
There is something going on with her, I think. Like whether it be the starborn power, whether it be something else that we don't know yet, but I think that there's something with her that is drawing people to her. It drew like Danica, it drew Ithan, it drew Connor.
Yeah, beyond the horn being tattooed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even Fury, that we don't know what she is yet, because we found out in this book that there's something, like she is something. She just hasn't let people know yet.
Do you think Fury is just like Amryn? Like she's ancient and must have come through when the rift was
I
open?
think that there are gods walking around. Yes. Like who those might be, I don't know for sure, but I think like I fully believe Hunt is something and just hasn't tapped in, because both the Prince of the Chasm and Apollyon, which is the Prince of something, I forgot what, have hinted that neither Bryce nor Hunt are at their full potential. And they need to get there because they are ready to go to war with them, but they need them at their full strength. And that was the Prince of the Chasm that said that, like, Hell's armies will bow to you. Like, basically, they will fight with you. And so, again, that's why I'm like, something's going on.
They say things like that, and then they also say things like treating Hunt and Bryce like weapons, right? It's very strange how they all talk. Is Apollyon the prince of the deepest level, like the pit?
I think
Is he
so.
the prince of the pit?
He mentioned that his brother was mad at him, and his brother is the Prince of the Chasm, right? So I don't understand the hierarchy of the Princes of Hell, because the Prince of the Chasm seems to be like very snarkily, like they'll do what I say kind of a thing. Like they're dealing with their own thing, but like we're together on this. And so I don't know on that.
Adis strikes me as kind of a Loki character, right? Like he embraces a
Mhm.
little more chaotic means of doing things and like his intentions are very unclear. Whereas Apollyon, he is the star eater, right? He's the one that ate one of
Uh-huh.
the Asteri, ate, took their light, whatever he did to that one, but
Mhm.
number 7 gone. But it's
Something
all
happened.
very yeah, something huge happened, but very interesting. But even with Cormac's arrival at this frat party, where Declan's like, hey, there's something weird going on with the camera. Someone's like darting in and out around the house. And then shadows come in the archway, and Cormac just kind of saunters out. And we see later that he is teleporting around and able to do,
Mhm.
which is called winnowing in Akatar. So we see like these very similar powers that are appearing in this series, and it's all very interesting.
And we didn't even like touch on, but how Ithan is back in the picture is he basically got kicked out of the Wolves by Sabine and beat to high hell.
Yeah, bad.
Because he stood up for Bryce in a newspaper where Sabine is like, oh, she's just a fame whore. And like Ithan was like, you shouldn't believe people who weren't even there. Like Bryce did the best, like she tried to save people. And so Sabine was mad that one of her wolves would like go
Dare.
against her
Yeah.
in that manner. And so she kicked him out. And then she comes over a second time. Like she comes to Bryce's house and is like threatening them because she thinks that they're like basically doing a coup because Bryce had the audacity to let Ithan stay in her house. And it's like, you kicked him out. You have no like say over him.
Yeah.
And that's basically what Ruhn, Hunt, and Baxian, who's the Hellhound, and Bryce, and everybody said to her, they're like, you need to just leave because you're wrong and he can do whatever he wants.
Poor Ethan, he's just put through the ringer in this book. I mean, so Sabine had the whole pack just beat his ass with Amelie, everyone. Amelie's sister Perry dumps Ethan at Bryce's apartment. And then Bryce is coming back from this apartment and she's basically getting PTSD because she smells all the blood in the air, sees the blood, and it's just like, oh my God, I'm coming home to my apartment again and people are dead. And so she's just having flashbacks. And then Ethan is there. And it becomes like this really heartwarming kind of situation where Ethan is the live-in roommate with Hunt and Bryce too, because all of this sexual tension is permeating the air 24/7 between Hunt and Bryce. And then you have Ethan just there, like lone wolf, nowhere to go.
And poor Ethan, as we find out later in the book, has been in love with her and like thought that she was going to be his wife one day. And the first scene, like when he shows up and she like doctors him and Hunt is getting a little pissed off. And then she's like, oh, he'll sleep in my room because I don't want blood on my couch. And Hunt's like, oh, the fuck he will. Um, but then he does because Bryce is like, yeah, it's my house. Like, move on.
I can't believe she slept in the same bed with him. And Hunt is just like
Yes.
lying in bed seething
Seething.
the whole night.
Yeah. And then later on in the book, we do have a spicy scene, as Sandra alluded to, with the
Contact name save.
yes. So she goes down on him, right? And like they're trying to be quiet because the wolf is in the house and he has really good hearing and all of this and he yells. He's like, why don't you have sex louder next time? Like, and then he said something else sarcastic and I just lost it because it was hilarious. But this was before I found out like how much this was probably hurting him to hear, but I just lost it. Like Ethan is like comedy gold in these books. Like he gets along with all of the like boys in the group, right? Like Ruhn kind of takes him under his shoulder and Tharion does. There's even a point that like Tharion's like, I called dibs on him being my friend. And like it's just heartwarming that he is like, even though he's a lone wolf, he is being let into a pack.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be the pack that he thought he was gonna have, but like this is a pack. I can see them forming. Like Bryce is like the like alpha of this pack, And, like, it's just, like, she's the glue holding, like,
Mhm.
this whole group together. And, like, Declan pulls him under his wing, and they do their, like, little spy, like, technology spy stuff together, and, like, it's just so cute. He's, like, everybody's little brother.
He's taking care of Syrinx.
Yeah. And then it's hilarious that he, like, when she walked back in and, like, she's like, "Oh, crap, there's the cat." And he's got the cat, and he's like, "He scared me a few minutes ago when he just showed up. I didn't know you had a cat." And the cat's just in Ethan's lap, and he's, like, petting it, and she's like, "Motherfucker." Like, and Hunt is pissed off and, like, he's, like, got his stuff drawn, and she, like, makes this offhanded comment about, like, something, and the prince of the chasm is like, "Whatever, you know we wouldn't hurt anybody, Bryce." And then
Ethan's
Ethan
just
just,
like,
like,
"Oh, shit."
jumps up, and he's like, "What the hell?" And
Ethan is
she's like,
so
"He's the
cute.
prince of the chasm." And he's like, "I just had the prince of the chasm on my lap."
Ethan is so adorable. Even that scene where, like, Bryce leaves, to go to work or the gym or something like that, and Ethan is, like, left in the house, and he's, like, picking up her sword and just, like, on top of the coffee table and, like, waving it around and, like, going through all these motions with the sword. Just
And
it's
also
like
talking out loud about,
yeah.
like, Holstrom, like
He's so he's, like, trying to channel some kind of, like, glory day for himself, and then Bryce, like, comes back into the apartment and just sees him standing awkwardly on the coffee table and just like, "I forgot something." It's just awkward, and then the table breaks, and they find some papers.
Yes. And we find out through that table breaking and through Tharion's, like, searching for Emile that there is a connection between Danica and Sofie. Like, they had been exchanging messages about a Project Thur and Dusk's.
Truth.
And so Danica had figured something out, I think. And it may have been through her hellhound,
Bloodhound, like mhm.
bloodhound sniffing abilities. Like, she can sniff out bloodlines, right? So we find that out, and Bryce is like, "No wonder she, like, figured out who my brother was before, like, I even told her." And she got that from her dad, who is Heinz, like,
Second in command.
second, Mordock, who is also a bloodhound. And he is a piece of work, and nobody likes him, and he should just go eat worms.
If Sabine was gonna reproduce with anyone, it would have been someone like Mordock. It makes sense. Too much sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. It also makes sense why she's got some of the powers she's got,
Uh-huh.
like, and some of the traits she had. But yeah, so we found out that they had been emailing about this, which it implies heavily that this is the same thing that Sofie has found out now. But Danica had died. Like, Danica sent her in to find this information. This is the information she has found and is now using, but nobody else knows. And that Danica basically gave them a spot to come meet that is safe somewhere in the city, right? And so I don't have an idea, except for I think it has something to do with bloodlines. Like, I think Bryce is something, like, more than we know Bryce is, right? But I'm torn because, like, why isn't her dad this, right? Because her mother is a human. So if she is something special, her dad would be a part of this line too, right? Unless her mom is the special. And we do have other characters posing as humans who can hide their sense, who are not fully human. So I'm wondering, is her mom not fully human and that's why she is okay being bitchy to, like, people that could probably realistically kill her very easily? Or is it her dad is something special that he doesn't know yet?
Somebody is keeping a secret. But even Ember's
Yes.
name, like what that means, it's strange to just be a
Hmm.
normal, quote unquote human. But even Einar, the Autumn King, Bryce's father, they talked about, at least in the first book, that he was very, very, very old, but shockingly, he looked Bryce's age, maybe a couple years
Hmm.
older, but like still looked incredibly young considering. So it's like, what kind of stuff has he been into as well? But like maybe he is something else. We don't know yet. So
Yeah.
we don't know.
So I think what she found out is something about the bloodlines of the Asteri, because we don't know anything about how they got there. They just kind of like are. And we did see that history books don't include anything about that, or the past before they were there. They only have the Asteri's like side of things. And so we are seeing much more into the history that might not be exactly what we know it is right now. Because we are hearing like very propaganda, like I envisioned like Hitler, like people didn't understand how bad he was because he was doing his own propaganda, right? And not letting people see it. And so I think it's something along those lines.
The name of the email, the subject line, Dusk's Truth. Anything come to mind? There was like one thing on second read through that popped into my head.
Well, I mean, there was a line about the Astari being like stars and like light, and dusk being the like end of light. But go ahead and tell me your second read through, because I don't know, maybe I missed something.
Well, because we just, a couple books ago read Silver Flames, but I think it might have even happened earlier, like Wings and Ruin or something. But they briefly mentioned how there was a dusk court at one time, and they disappeared and no one knows what happened. But it used to be like this isle that was off of the main continent between, was it day and dawn court? Or it was between day and night court or something like that. It was like right there. So I'm like, there's like these weird little things. I'm like, did they somehow go through the Northern Rift and end up in Crescent City? And that's why we're seeing like this weird, like the Autumn King, he has firepower, but his son has like shadow power. And then you have Cormac's side of the family that's doing like, winnowing around. And there's so much. So it's like Danica's secrets. Like you thought you were done with them in the first book, but I mean, it just keeps going.
Keeps hitting, because Ithan knew who her dad was, but nobody else did. And he lets the cat out of the bag, and he even like uses it against Sabine when she shows up. And he's like, oh, well, you're like, I don't know if I can trust you because you fucked Lord.
She was not happy about that coming out. Yeah.
No. So yeah. And then we see another side of Cormac. And I sent Sandra a message that I kind of like Cormac before I knew this part. And so I felt very validated when I did find out this part. But basically, Cormac is Agent Silver. And he is there under the guise of this betrothal. Like, he doesn't actually want it either, because he is trying to find Emile, because he promised Sofie like that he would keep him safe, and he has done a shit job of it so far.
Yeah.
And so he is there for that. And then he also told the rebellion basically that he thinks he knows somebody else that might be able to help stay in connection with Daybright, who is a person in the Asteri, like close to the Asteri, that is giving them information to like help the rebellion. And what do you think about her?
Daybright? I feel like when I first read, I spent my whole time thinking, I'm like, it has to be Hypaxia, right? Because they had a lot of similarities. Like Ruhn kept talking about how her scent was familiar to him, like her voice, that kind of thing. Like it's definitely someone that he has met in some capacity before. So Cormac being Silver, you have to play the game of who is it that we've met already in the book? Like it has to be somebody that we've spent some time with.
Do we know where his mom is?
No. She's not really mentioned a whole lot. Kind of like in Throne of Glass, like Dorian's mom. Like she's just kind of off page. Just a aristocrat doing whatever she does.
Well, but she may be in the Asteri camp.
Are you not getting mate kind of vibes between Daybright and...
I am. I'm just saying like who else it might be that like he would know. He would definitely know his mother, right? But you would think he would know his mother enough that it wouldn't be any question of who this is.
But it's a very weird plane that they meet on, a very in-between kind of realm. So it's very strange. Like she's always shrouded in light and...
looks like Lily.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like all of the references to Lily in this, it just made me so sad.
So we also figure out that Hypaxia can, like, she is not only the the witch queen's daughter, but she had a sister, has a sister, the Hind. Like, that's her half sister. Her mother got with I forgot who and had this daughter who didn't have any witch abilities, so she was sent to live with her dad, who did a bang on job of raising this chick, right? Like, created a like psychopath. And then you've got like sweet little Hypaxia. Like,
Yeah.
it's like the polar opposite of this chick. Very nurture versus nature like thing going on here. But you find out that Hypaxia's dad was a necromancer. So she's got the ability to bring back people from the dead. And I really hope
Tara.
Sarah J Maas is going to bring like Laylee back and Connor. Like, I don't think we can bring Danica back at this point because the last of her soul is gone, right? But like, there are a few people we could bring back to life that I would be happy about. Not Micah or Sandriel, but and not even Shahar. Like, leave that bitch dead. Like, I don't like her.
I don't like her. She was very selfish and used Hunt. You know what I mean? It was very unfair to him.
I think Hunt is figuring that out in this book.
Yeah,
that she used
he was. He was looking at her through rose-colored lenses the whole time, but in retrospect, he sees like how flawed that relationship was.
Did you get like a Stockholm syndrome vibe out of that? Like,
yeah,
he was trapped and he like fell for his captor, like kind of thing.
100%.
And now that he's been out of it, he's like seeing like the truth of what that was.
I just loved your reaction to Hypaxia having necromantic powers because we're about to read the last half of this book until Flame of Shadows. I can't tell you anything that's going to happen because you're about to find out for yourself, but it's like, it's comforting because I didn't catch that for some reason. I just glossed over it in my first read when I was just trucking right along. But it's comforting to know that Hypaxia is around and has this power in case someone that we love happens. But I'm not convinced that someone, as much as I love Lihaba, can come back. Just because, like, if you're necromantic, don't you need something like physical to be able to work with still? And like,
I don't know. I mean, like, we're implementing our view on necromancy, and that might not be like what it's like, because like the Fae have changed in all three senses of the books a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like, so like whatever we think maybe necromancy means outside of bringing people back from the dead, we don't know yet in the book. But like, I do think that there has to be some like something of that person left. And I don't think Lihaba has anything left. Like, she was just like kind of like a flame put out. Like, there's no soul left. There's no whatever left. So I don't think we'll get her back, but like,
I want her back. I need her sass.
I do too.
I mean, Ethan's been good, at his own expense, the funny things that have happened in this book. So that helps with the comic relief. But we
need her back.
Our little horny fire sprite.
And so like, that was mentioned by Ruhn when he's talking to Daybright, right? Which she goes by Day, and she gave him the nickname of Night. So we've got Day and Night talking, and then we've got like Dusk's Truth. So maybe we'll get it out of those two. Maybe they will figure it out. But anyway, off on a tangent. So he mentions that the way she is shrouded in like flames, basically, and the way she was sitting on her couch, like she like, it reminded him of Lihaba. Like, anyways.
Lihaba.
Lihaba. I was like, I'm not saying this right, but yeah. Anyway, so it reminded him of her. And Dave was like, something just made you very sad. And he's like, oh, you just reminded me of like this fire sprite I knew. And she's like you're associating with like basically the help.
A lower.
And he's like she gave her life for somebody I love. And like basically mentions that he would have traded with her because this person that he loves her. And like, Day, I think, got a very good sense of his character from that comment. And it's like, oh, you're a good man, basically, because he was willing to trade his life for a lower being.
I mean, do you have any guesses at who Daybright is?
I have some guesses. They're probably like wildly wrong.
But
But
that's the fun
we
part of
have
these
not
discussions.
we have not heard very much about the seventh Asteri. We know that she was eaten, right?
Mhm.
But like in Throne of Glass? No, in Akatar, sorry. We have like the witches, or not the witches, the human queens. And like
Mhm.
one of them disappears and like is thought to be dead. So did this person actually get eaten? Did they? Or is this Daybright them and she's like just under incognito? Or like I thought Hypaxia too. I can't think of anybody else that like we have met.
I feel like I thought Celestina as well.
But she's here. So like how would she like we got a clear distinct like that this person is in. But yes, I can see Celestina because she hints that she was very close with Shahar and that she would have joined the rebellion if she was able to, basically to Hunt. And that like if he needs anything, she's there for him. And basically they had started a little bond.
Mhm. What do you think of this whole thing? Do you trust Celestina? I mean, she's a new character that's introduced. I feel like you're always like erring on the side of caution because as much as you want
Mm-hmm.
to like people, you're like, I just know I'm being set up.
Yes, I cautiously think she's telling the truth. Like, I'm, if I were Hunt or anybody around her, I would not be letting my like guards down, but I think she might be telling the truth. I don't know how much power she has in that truth because as we're finding out, like, she is being watched by the Asteri and she is being like
Yes.
moved around this game board by the Asteri, which is shown because she is forced to marry Ephraim to
To
produce
make
heirs
babies. Yeah.
because now they're down archangels or yeah, so now they have to like have more produced.
Thanks, Bryce and Hunt.
Yeah.
It's just a strange book because they're going around trying to figure out what happened to Sofie. Where is
Mm-hmm.
Emile? And everyone is looking out for them. Like we mentioned Tharion, like Tharion has just been playing like Coast Guard, essentially, like being called out at the River Queen's beck and call for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we get that little scene where he has an exchange with the River Queen's daughter. And she just kind of strikes me as being this very sheltered and naive, like airhead kind of princess. Like, that gets anything that she wants. And then if
Mm-hmm.
anything displeases her, the River Queen hears about it and then punishes Tharion. So you kind of feel just awful for him too. Like he is very
Mm-hmm.
much, there's so many people here that, yeah, they're not like SPQM slaves, but they still have to follow whatever their masters want, whatever arena that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty messed up.
We do see like Bryce and her pack kind of steering towards a rebellion, which Hunt is like, we shouldn't do this, guys. Like, been there,
I
done that. It
know.
didn't end well. And so he's trying to like caution them, but Bryce is like full steam ahead, and Hunt's like, well, I guess if she's going, I'm going. I was just not doing it because I wanted to protect her. But like, if my protection is this, then this is it. And so we see them visiting the Bone Quarter and talking to the Underking, which I thought may be Bryce's, or not Bryce's dad, Hunt's dad. Like, because that's a like super powerful person, right? But anyway, he did not let anything like leak if he was in any way like related to Hunt. So I'm beginning to wonder if my theory was maybe wrong there. But he basically tells them that like all souls get like put back into the ether of like the power. Basically, they're eaten on the way out.
It's very dark, right?
Yeah.
Bryce has like an oh fuck moment because she saw Danica and the pack of devils there. And what she saw was sunshine and meadows and a happy place, and that they were going to this eternity somewhere that was, happier. And
Happy.
then the place that they see at the Underkings is not the case at all. And he's saying that these people are eaten and become second light.
It's basically like she envisioned them in heaven and they're actually in hell.
Or like a purgatory, right?
But they're about to go to hell.
Yeah. Have you ever seen What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams? Basically, the premise of that movie is his wife kills herself after the death of their children and the death of Robin Williams, like her husband. And so she gets sent to purgatory, and he leaves heaven to try and search for her in purgatory. And it's a very dark, scary place. There's like just people living their worst thing for all of eternity and can't ever leave. And it made me think of that immediately, like the Under King's realm.
But Hunt and Bryce try out something very special while they're in this realm, right? Which is something that Apollyon had mentioned in a dream nightmare that he did to Hunt. Basically, he visited him and like made it to where he couldn't move and was like, you aren't as far along as you should be, and I'm gonna make you like, basically he's gonna attack him, right? And so Hunt is like, well, maybe I can try this, as they're being attacked by reapers and something called the shepherd, which is some sort of like demon, right?
That can split into three.
Yeah, it's like Cerberus from like Greek mythology. But anyway, or a hydra, I guess. I didn't get a good sense of what these heads were. Anyway, and so they're being attacked by this thing, and Hunt is shooting his lightning, and Bryce stands in front of it and basically becomes a conduit of it and strengthens it. And then like all hell breaks loose for these demons and the reapers. They're all goners. And Bryce had already discovered that like the star sword thing could kill a reaper because they attacked Ruhn, and she went after him and she like sliced him up with the sword. So
yeah, it became a very flesh and bone kind of thing, and the blade kills the unkillable
when used by her. I don't know if it would have killed him if it was used by Ruhn, though, because he doesn't have the same powers.
Correct.
So it may have been just Thea.
That was such a like Power Rangers type of scene with Hunt and Bryce. Did it not kind of remind you of like Aelin and Rowan being Karanom to each other? Like Aelin's able to like siphon power from him.
Which hints more at them being true mates and not just deciding. I think that was their way of like controlling the situation. You know what I'm saying? Like having some control in it. Like they knew that they were already like mated. Like they could feel it, but like they're like, well, we get to decide, kind of a thing.
But everyone eventually finds out because they plan to tell everyone, but then everyone is able to smell their scents mingling or whatever, because there's the scene where Hunt goes down on Bryce at the gym, right? And he's using his
where everybody
lightning where everyone could see, and he's like spreading his wings to like block the windows and stuff and cutting off the camera with his electricity power that he wields. But he's like using his lightning on her as he's like going down on her. And so obviously she helps herself to him, he helps herself to her, and then everyone can like smell their scents like kind of change. And so it's like then it's kind of like that other definition of mates too, with like their bond that way.
I know everybody hints that it's changing because of the sex, but I'm wondering if it's changing because they are acknowledging that they're mates. Like, because it started changing when they said I love you, which is the first thing, right? And then they decided that they were mates, and then they noticed it again, right? So like, is it the sex? Because like Ruhn has fucked his fair share of people, right? And like nobody mentioned that his scent changes every time he fucks somebody, right? Cormac obviously has been sleeping with Sofie. Nobody's mentioned that he has a different scent. It doesn't change every time you sleep with somebody.
No.
So is it because they are mates and now it's changing? Because we know like Aelin and Rowan, their scents change when they mated. And the same with like in Akatar. So is it the sex or is it the mating?
Yes, something is different about how it works here, I think. This is the first time where it felt more like an option between the two, like something that was mutually accepted rather than being thrust upon them and then them accepting that passionate, like destined type of mating bond in the other series, right? It's very strange.
Yeah, but I think that has a lot to do with Hunt and Bryce's personalities. Like, I don't think Bryce would accept being a mate and having no control over it. Like,
Oh, hell
like
no.
she even bristled at like the fact that Connor thought that they were mates. And she's like, I'm not property. Like, no. I think some of that is like they both aren't willing to not have control. Like
Mhm.
Hunt has had like 200 years of not having control over his life and he finally got freedom. And so it's like, we're making this decision. And even if it's not really their decision to make, like if it's inevitable, right? They're still gonna cling to that one little like piece that they are saying they're making the decision.
Speaking of people hooking up, we find out that Pollux and the Hind are an item or something because there's that scene where Celestina is like meeting with them, and Pollux is basically standing there, I fucking the Hind the entire time. And it's just like these people, and their whole group of friends are just worried about this triary of horrible people being here because Lunathian is their city, and these people just wreak havoc wherever they go. They don't follow the laws like everybody else. They do what they will. Pollux is just openly a rapist, and everyone knows it. And it's just you get the ickies with them being there.
Okay, so you mentioned Pollux is a rapist because he tries to do that in this city already. Like he's been
Uh-huh.
here for 2 days and he already is like raping people. And Baxian stops him, right?
Mhm.
And like beats him. Like, what do you think of like that relationship? Because there's like a hint that Baxian either likes the Hind or the Hind likes him. I can't like get the grasp on like what that situation is.
I definitely got like Ethan to Bryce vibes, like just pining over someone. It's like an unrequited love, but because they were involved with somebody else, they just shut up about it and kept it contained inside. Like that's how it felt to me, like how Ethan felt about Bryce. But
But that destroys my like thought of Baxian because right now I think he's like a pretty decent guy, right? And has
mhm.
just been like forced to do some really horrible things. But like if he does have an unrequited love for the Hind, that's shot to hell because there's no way you can like be in love with a chick who is that sadistic and not be sadistic yourself.
Mhm. He's a very mysterious character. He's in that like Lorcan kind of stereotype, like
Mm-hmm.
that pillar of character to me. Like they're obviously very morally gray and they have flashes of being
They are
good,
morally like
but
black. Like
they do, yeah, they do very bad things and associate with very bad people. But it's also one of these things where they were all working under Sandriel, and Sandriel was just a piece of fucking
mm-hmm.
shit too. And so maybe it's like they feel like they can be a little more truer to who they are, before being stuck under her. So we will see. It's just strange.
And so everybody is also looking for Sofie because we find out that where she is supposed to be in the river, Tharion did not find her. He found locks that were open on those little blocks that were tied to her. So we are not sure whether or not Sofie is alive or dead, which Cormac is very happy about, that it wasn't like a 100% dead moment. He's like, okay, well, we can have hope. And so we're having hope
Is that what you think? Having hope?
that Sofie is still alive and maybe can fill us in a little bit about like what the fuck is going on with Danica and the rest of this. So yes, I have hope that she's alive.
Danica just strikes me as this like super genius who was like a history geek and like so talented at what she did. And she realized too late the depths that she was in and how dangerous like her position was, and that's why she tried protecting Bryce.
Like I get very Aelin vibes off of her, like she was like 10 steps ahead
Yeah,
of other people in finding out this knowledge and like doing stuff.
she's just undertaking it all herself.
And then we end this book after all of these like trials and tribulations with Ethan going with Tharion and Bryce, which that whole like Bryce coming and Ethan's like, she doesn't need to know about this. And like Tharion's like, hey, I like my balls attached to me. She's coming. Like, We're going to tell her. So they're going to the Mystics, which this scene gave me very Minority Report. Do you remember that Colin Farrell movie?
Yes, I remember. I also remember your huge obsession with Colin Farrell.
Mhm.
Probably still obsessed with Colin
there.
Farrell.
I mean, okay, hold on. I
Oh,
have to
no.
remember. Still have a significant obsession with Colin Farrell. You can't see it very well, but it is signed by Colin Farrell. Like, yes.
You guys, Tara had like soccer players on the wall of her dorm room, pictures of Colin Farrell. Like, nothing has changed in 20 years.
Okay, well, Sandra had Johnny Depp, and nothing has changed in 20 years. So
this is also true.
It wasn't only Tara like putting dudes on the wall. Okay. But yes, I did. I still have a calendar from 2010 or maybe earlier that is Michael Owen.
Michael Owen. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Just kept that. Like, need to see those pictures some more. It's better than just a year long of pictures.
Anyway, back to the Mystics.
Oh yes, the Minority Report. So they like, I forgot what they're cogs, whatever they're called in that movie. The people that like saw the crime happening in the future.
The precognition? The
precogs.
Precogs.
Yes. I was like, something cogs. I don't remember. But yeah, so they saw the crime happening in the future. So like, and they were all in this like pool of water with like these things strapped to their heads. And that's what I'm like envisioning with these mystics, because they're in this pool of like salt water searching around for like the truth or the whatever people ask.
I also got like Matrix vibes too, like when they're plugged in and submerged and have like the tubes coming out of their body too, and they're just like pretty much plugged in and they download whatever and can go wherever. I definitely see flashes of both of that. That was such a creepy scene because there's 3 of the mystics, right? 1 male, 1 female, and 1 both. And the guy, I forget what he's called, but that owns these people, which they are just like shells of people. They have like signed away their life. And in doing this, their families are getting sent money, for them sacrificing their lives to become just plugged into this and do this. And it's so gross. But who do they end up like traveling to? Like, where do they go? Because they can't see anything, right? It's just pitch black.
It's another prince, isn't it?
Uh-huh. It is. I think it's the, which one was it? Astronomer. That was the old guy's name. Prince of the Ravine, Thanatos. And he's like, let me see them. I want them to see me. And it's just like, that's what we ended the first half of the book on, is this cliffhanger. And even before that, the fire sprites in the astronomer's rings, the 4, like, and you see like the little fire sprite like put their hand out against like the glass that they're trapped in this man's ring. Like, oh, I feel bad. I feel bad. It makes my heart hurt.
And Thanatos is like a god of death in like Greek mythology, isn't he?
He's someone, because I've heard the name before.
What's the like god in Marvel, like the bad dude? Thanos?
Thanos.
Okay, yes. So then I am thinking right. Thanatos. I'm like, wait, am I thinking of that? So Thanatos is a Greek god for death. I think he is like a like savage death, like wartime kind of a death. So yeah, that popped me back into like exactly what he was. But they were asking about Connor. And so even the astronomer was like, when Thanatos was like, there's no wolf in this part, like there never was, alive or dead. So like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, who sent you? And the little like mystics were like, a mer, a wolf, and a half-blood. And he's like, I want to see him. So he knew right away who these people were, right?
With all this talk of like even the rebellion, like Daybright's meetings with Knight, and he passes on the information to Cormac and the rebellion with like where shipments of equipment is going to be, ammunition, these mech suits that are going to turn the tides of war, or so some people think. And there's even been a lot of mentions of like maelstroms, and like even in the art that you see of the cover, you'll see like the little maelstroms in there too. And you see, like, I was 38 years old when I learned that there was a Pegasus on every cover of every book in the Crescent City book. So, yeah. Oh, so you're wearing your Pegasus shirt too. No,
Yeah,
so
it
like,
says do it for the miniature Pegasus. I love it.
yes. First, you're like, oh, it's Jelly Jubilee. It's like a nod to Jelly Jubilee because she's like this unicorn Pegasus thing. And surely enough, if you like look at every single book, like center of his chest, you can see two unicorn Pegasus coming out around this horned wolf. But if you look at every cover in Crescent City, you do see like the Pegasus creature. And it's like, okay, Tara, what other book have we seen a Pegasus in? There was one Pegasus, it was black, and one of your favorite characters wrote it into a little meeting. Do you remember what book that was?
No.
It was A Court of Wings and Ruin, wasn't it? And it was Helion riding the black Pegasus because he couldn't ride his chariot to the meeting. Like they said no. And so he rode in on a Pegasus.
Yes.
And
I
then in
forgot
that
about
book,
that.
in Akatar, they said there used to be an island like full of like wild Pegasuses. And they are, you know, Helion has
Pegasi?
like, so the plural is Pegasuses. And it's capital
I know,
P. Isn't that weird?
It's like
Yeah.
octopus.
No, we had
Like
that
octopi?
conversation. Like, is it Pegasi or Pegasuses? I prefer Pegasi, but yeah. Had to look into that one. But yeah. So it's like, you talk about war, and it's like, okay, shit is happening. These little factions are mobilizing. They're doing all of this spy work behind the scenes. We have, you know, Pegasuses, which they talk about with like the Valkyries riding on them. And yeah.
Hold up your book again, because is mine different than yours?
This is a paperback.
Mine's
but it's
a paperback too.
This is the Barnes and Noble one. And
like yours is much clearer. I don't see the sorry, this is off topic, but I'm trying to find the Pegasus in mine. Like,
it's just
I see a little bit of a head, but like it's covered up by the sea in mine.
Yeah, you should only see, like, I think it's part of its neck and head.
It's like
that will too.
It's like right here.
Yeah.
But like I don't see the other
them.
side because it's all covered up in the sea.
In House of Earth and Blood, it was like above, kind of like top right, and then Flame and Shadow, it's like above the left shoulder. So do you think this is Hunt, or do you think this is somebody else, by the way, on the cover of this?
So I'm getting like Tharion vibes off of this.
You're getting Tharion?
At least for part of it. Like it looks very much like scales in some parts.
Does look like scales. It's just, there's so much confusion to me about Hunt, and then they keep mentioning this Project Thur. I'm like, okay, what is going on with this Thur and Thunderbirds?
There are wings
and
too.
Yes. And what do you think of like Hunt's power being so similar to like the Thunderbird? Because I feel like Hunt hasn't realized his full power yet either. And it's just, I keep going back to the prologue where Sofie did like incredible power, like electrocuting people and making things explode. And then she said that her brother was even more powerful than her, and 4 submarines were taken out. And it just makes you wonder, like it all seems very closely related.
Yes. Like maybe his mom was a Thunderbird.
Something. But even from the first book in Crescent City, Reader Industries, whatever it was, like Bryce's douchey ex, like they were doing Redner. They were doing like human tests and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were doing some kind of biological engineering and stuff. And that's what the Project Thur is, you know, referring back to some god-like person. I was getting like Final Fantasy VII, like Sephiroth vibes for sure. But we will see.
Like, this is part of Sarah J Maas's talent, and it's very Taylor Swift talent. Like keeps you guessing the entire time of what's actually happening, and like you have to do some like severe research, like go down like this clown hole of like everything to be able to even get like a theory.
It's so complex, and everything is just so intricate. You talked about spider webs in the previous episode, and that's what I love so much about Throne of Glass as well. That whole series is like, there were so many times where you're reading a page and it harks back, you know, a few books ago, like something that she just sprinkled in, and then it starts happening across series.
I don't even know if these are spider webs at this point. It's just so like detailed. And
Mhm.
like I said, I don't even know that I know anything at this point. And
I
I'm
know.
like
We're
a
just
book
like,
and a half in. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but shit is going on. Like, I
you're
don't
like,
know.
I know something big
I
is going
thought
on.
I thought I'd figured it out, but clearly I didn't. So
It's okay. We're all just gonna learn together.
yeah, it's keeping me right on the edge of my seat. So I don't know. I have like these little theories, but I'm like, I am so far off. I know it. Like with Akatar, I could be like, oh yeah, this guy is this, and like I have this idea, and like I know Hunt is something, I know Bryce is something. What I couldn't tell you though, like, and even in like Throne of Glass, like I knew who Aelin was, like from very early on, like, and then I was just piecing together those smaller things and how we got there, and like we were having this war and whatever. But with this one, I'm like, I've got no clues. Like, there's not been like a spider web leading up to it. There's been like, have you ever seen those videos of like spiders on different kinds of drugs? And
Oh
like,
God, I've heard of them. I don't know if I've sat there and went down that rabbit
it's
hole.
it's like the spider on whatever drug it was that makes them like go into like all kinds of different like areas and then like doesn't actually lead back to the beginning or whatnot. Like you have your marijuana spider that's just very slowly like building its web and it gets eat because it's like too dumb to like make its spider web right. And then you have, I think it was like either cocaine or speed, like I don't remember what kind of drug it was, heroin, I don't know. But it like makes the spider like this
Crazy.
spider web. Now,
Yeah.
I feel like that in this book, if we're gonna say these are spider webs, that's what I feel like. It's not like a let's go in our circle. We're getting somewhere.
It feels like you're standing in the middle of it and you know something huge is happening. Like you know that for a fact, but you
Yeah.
just don't know what it is. It reminds me of how you were like Throne of Glass. You were like, it was only a couple chapters in. You're like, oh, she's someone. She's someone because the little people are like talking to her. And you're like, she's
Hmm.
someone. It's like you didn't know who just yet because that bombshell was dropped like the end of the second book. But yeah,
Yeah, but like I had figured out before the bombshell
yeah,
was dropped
yeah.
who she was. But like this one, I'm like, I'm a book and a half in, and I'm like, well, I know she's Faye.
You're like, and I don't even trust that fully, but yeah.
Yes. Like, not really sure that that's the truth, though.
Tara, I hope that your mind is blown the second half of this book because that's pretty much where my brain has been the last couple years. It's like stuck at the end of this book.
I feel like I was promised the like mind-blowing part at the end of this half last episode. And that did not happen, and now I have to wait even longer and read even more to get to the mind blown.
Well, you said that. You're like, something crazy happens halfway through House of Sky and Breath.
Hmm.
And so we get to talk about it. And so I'm like sitting here racking my brain trying to figure out like what that could possibly be. So it's going to be like a discovery process for me too, because I'm not remembering what happened roughly halfway through. So we'll see.
It may be chapter 39, where we find
Maybe,
out like
maybe just
what
one
he's
more.
doing with the eye opening.
It
That may
might
be the
be.
mind blowing moment.
So we are left with the Prince of the Ravine, Thanatos, being very sinister. And oh, Hunt was punished too because he's not allowed to sleep at Bryce's for like 2 weeks. He's being punished for ditching Celestina, which I did feel bad for Celestina because who wants to
Hmm.
deal with all
Well,
that
and he
shit?
just made the
I
like
know. It was
the
just
like I will be here. Just give me a signal, and then he's like, peace.
bye. And then Baxian follows him out, and she's just like, what the fuck?
I'm like, I feel like Bryce could have handled that situation on her own. Like, she already had Ruhn, she already had Ithan, she already had Tharion, she already had Cormac. Like, it's fine, Hunt. Stay your ass where you're supposed to be.
True. But didn't Sabine like grab her by the throat and like throw her across the room too? Like when she opened the door and they were like, well,
Well,
shit,
yeah,
should have
but
checked the door first. But yeah, yeah. She had a bunch of people
like,
there.
that was before everybody knew that there was danger, right? Like, and before she texted him. So, like,
Yeah.
she's fine. Chill.
She's fine. uh,
Like, Bryce is a big girl, as they keep saying. Like,
Yes.
oh, and we didn't even talk about Juniper, because there's a scene where, like, Fury, like, says Juniper's a big girl, right? When they're, like, going in the meat market looking for a meal. So it's Fury, Juniper, Hunt, and Bryce, right? And so they're all
Yes.
splitting up. And at first they're like, don't want to split up. And Bryce is like, I'm a big girl. It'll be fine. And then, like, he says something about Juniper, and Juniper, like, Fury's like, she's a big girl too. And we figure out that the reason she hates the meat market so much is her brother was, like, basically made to fight in the meat market and died. And his body was just given back to his family, like, with a whatever sign it is, like momentum morty or whatever.
Memento Mori, yeah.
And so she hates it. But then Fury's, like, note after it, she's like, someday I'm going to burn this place to the ground.
I hope that is foreshadowing.
And that was, like, also right after we figured out, or right before we figured out that Fury might be something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, bitch is going to burn it all to the ground. Like,
Tara lives for this shit. Female rage.
I was like, wrath. That was my moment. I'm like, yes. Burn it, baby, burn it.
Yes. There are so many things that, like, harkened to ACOTAR and Throne of Glass too, though. Like, when they visited the Underking and they're talking about the black obelisks with the weird markings on it, which reminds you of, like, the clock tower and the weird black stone and all of that shit. And even the obelisk that's the top of Ramiel, where the blood right for the Illyrians is in Silver Flames.
Well, and also, like, all of the, like, wordmark-esque, like, things and, like, different languages that she is coming up.
Like the one on her back. Like, it makes you wonder if, like, that's the ancient language or whatever. Yeah. There's so many things.
Yep.
So any guesses what's going to happen or what you want to see happen? No guesses whatsoever.
Well, I have things I want to happen, but I am, like, so lost right now. I hope that we find Emile and, like, figure out if he's connected to, like, Hunt, or, like, he could even be connected to Bryce, because Bryce is the one that, like, was the conduit of power there. So, like, Bryce could siphon it, but, like, or not Bryce, Hunt could siphon it. So I don't know.
We'll see.
There's too many clues.
Buckle up. Yeah. There's too much shit.
Too many. I can't keep them straight.
Too many. So next week, Tara and I are going to talk about part 2. When I say part 2, I mean just the second half of the book, not the literal part, because the book is split into several parts. So the second half of the book, which is going to cover chapters 39 onward. And then all hell is going to break loose when we have this conversation. So hopefully we can have some fun with more just open theorizing, because you will be caught up with me at this point.
Yes.
So thank you for tuning in. And I just have to give a shout out to Cecilia over on Facebook. Like, thank you for being such a cheerleader and for sharing our stuff, and everyone that's joined the book club. There are over 50 of you on the Amazon book club for Story Darlings now. So that's super fun. So very exciting.
Do we have any suggestions of what book next?
We have several suggestions. So what I feel like we need to do, Tara, is, like, pop those books up on screen in, like, an in-between episode and just kind of talk about what they are and do a vote, and then do, like, an announcement or something on what's next after Crescent City. So it'll be fun.
We are getting closer and closer to that 5,000 mark too.
We are.
Right? So like we said, I don't know, back in ACOTAR days, once we hit that mark, we're going to have some sort of giveaway. We don't know yet. Yeah. I'm hoping that it'll be a giveaway with whatever we have going on the podcast around that time. So, like,
yes, that would be fun.
A tie-in of some way. So
fun.
Thank you for supporting us.
Yes. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week. All right. Bye.
Bye.